Welcome back to the New England Job Show. My name is Brian Henchy, and again, special thanks to the Greater Merrimack Human Resource Association members, Deborah Burkholder and Mike Tenney, for orchestrating the Talk with Corporate Recruiters. We are talking with our guests, who are immediately to my right. David Hausman has over 30 years experience in human resources, most recently with BAE Systems and DRS Defense Solutions. He's a recipient of a BAE Systems HR Excellence Award for a program he developed to train managers in behavior-based interviewing. David holds a bachelor's degree in history from High Point University, and last year David was caught in a layoff from BAE, so he has a thorough appreciation for the challenges job seekers face. And second from my right is Cynthia Wright. She's the author of 366 Tips for a Successful Job Search. Hopefully we'll find out why it's not 365 soon. Available through Amazon and Barnes & Noble. She has over 15 years experience as a recruiter in defense, software, telecommunications, and manufacturing, as well as other industries. Cynthia has also been a career columnist on several websites, as well as the Nashua, New Hampshire-based newspaper, The Telegraph. She holds a Bachelor of Science in Marketing from Rutgers and a Master's Certificate in Human Resources from Southern New Hampshire University. And finally, my last guest is Lisa Weingarten, has over 30 years experience in staffing, working with companies such as Bolt, Beranek & Newman, Lotus Development, and for the last 17 years with Mercury Computer Systems, a best-of-breed provider of open application-ready subsystems for the intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance market. Lisa holds a Bachelor of Science in Community Service from the University of Massachusetts. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us for our second segment here. And we were talking about phone screens before we took our break, and one thing that I wanted to ask was about the questions that candidates should expect during phone screens. So why don't we start with Dave? What sort of questions should candidates expect during a phone screen?
Sure. You know, it's really a tool to make a decision whether you're going to invite the person in or not. It's not a formal interview. With us, it's typically a review of the background to see if they've got the experience that we're looking for, and to get a sense of the individual. Can they communicate? You know, are they reasonable people actually as well? So, you know, it's a quick screen is really what it is.
It is. It's a way to screen. You know, my first question is, are you available? If it's a no, it's probably going to be a very short call. I'll always ask, do you know anybody? That's my last question on the phone screen. What are you looking for in terms of dollars?
When you say available, you mean to talk at that moment, or you mean
available
for the
to,
job?
you know,
Okay.
are you still job seeking? What are you looking for in terms of dollars? What was your last salary? What are you looking for next? I'm doing that to see if it's a low salary, they might be underqualified. If it's way too high, I can't waste my manager's time bringing that person in because we don't have it in budget.
It always seems like when it comes to the salary question, that it almost seems like there's never a right answer, except for exactly what the recruiter is looking for in terms of a salary.
There's a way to kind of fix that. If there's a smart candidate, they'll say, so what does the job pay? Of course, I'm not going to tell them, but it can't hurt to ask. And I'll ask why you are looking or why you left your last position, et cetera. That's where the good answer comes in. I'm looking for more opportunity. I'm hitting my head on the glass ceiling, et cetera. Keep it positive.
With the salary question, though, it really is just trying to figure out if the candidate is a reasonable match on that. So we're really looking for honesty on that, too. So, you know, I would suggest a candidate to actually tell you what their last salary is, and you know, if they've got an ability to negotiate or take a lower salary, to have a quick discussion about that actually as well. So it's really a screen, you know, do they match salary-wise or not?
Also, we're dealing in a range. Sometimes the range is quite vast, where if you say a number, you have a pretty good chance of, you know, sort of being within the range. So it's not one minute number.
And what about giving a range versus a number? Lisa, does
From
that?
a recruiter perspective, or from
Sure.
if asked, it would always be a range. It would never be a specific number.
Oh, really? Okay.
Absolutely.
Because I would think that if you say, okay, I'm willing to work from 50,000 to 120,000, slightly broad.
Has to be a little bit realistic.
Yeah, but yeah, my concern has always been, obviously, as the candidate, I want to get as much money as I possibly can with still being able to get the position.
Being
So-
competitive yet fair. You want to be competitive yet fair, right? But he or she who mentions money first loses.
And that's the word that I've always heard. And you mentioned right management in a previous segment. That's exactly what they've said before, that if you mention money before they do, you've lost. So although you're recommending asking, what does the position pay?
Yeah, it doesn't mean we have to tell you, though, right?
The problem is that it always comes down to money at some point. So
Sure,
really,
certainly.
it's why waste anyone's time?
Right.
So you may not want to pin yourself down to some specific number, but you should be realistic and have a planned response that's something you can live with within a range.
Absolutely. In fact, 99.9% of candidates will give me a number or a range. The 1/10 of 1% or whatever it is that doesn't, that's the red flag. Because you figure if everybody else is doing it and there's that one little person who's not, there's something wrong.
Right.
And that's called next, in my mind, because it doesn't happen that frequently.
Okay. Why don't we talk about our next topic, which is going to be about on-site interviews. What is the best way to prepare for an on-site interview? And I'll throw that to Dave.
Sure. You know, with most of the companies I've worked with before, they use a behavior-based interview style, which is to ask the candidate for examples of things that they've done in the past. So if you literally pick apart the job description and identify the skills and the tasks that they have to do, and think to yourself before you go to the interview, what experience do you have that relates to that? What examples can you bring out that would help to accentuate the strengths that you have actually as well? You can be pretty well prepared for an interview going in. You know, and most interviews won't be scripted precisely, but you'll be more relaxed because you're more comfortable, and you can spend more of your energy than trying to make a connection with the people that you're interviewing with to establish a relationship and a rapport. You can have all the skills in the world that match that job and still not get the interview if the people you've interacted with don't want to work with you.
So actually, Cynthia, a question I had for you was, give an example of a time where you were interviewing somebody and they just did not, you just said in your head, they did not prepare adequately for this interview.
I used to work at Goodrich, and as you know, Goodrich was a very big tire company that sold its interest in tires to Michelin 25 years ago. The candidate came in and obviously didn't research because he asked if we gave employees discounts on tires. I knew he didn't research the company. Why? Because we were doing intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance systems, which had absolutely nothing to do with tires. And I knew he didn't really even check our website, which would have given him a really good idea of what we did, which was selling reconnaissance systems to the Air Force.
And that's actually something I hadn't really thought about before, is asking, hey, do I get a discount on your product during the interview?
Well, in the interest of fairness, he was like a young kid. He was like a 23-year-old.
Oh, yeah.
And you gotta give him a little bit of slack because he's young, and it's amusing if nothing else. But he also didn't do his due diligence and his research.
Okay. So beyond that, also, what about problems with people not being prepared in terms of dress or appropriate behavior? Or have you seen anything?
So at our company, it's
Dave's
very
I'm
yeah,
looking forward to that.
it's very important that not only do you dress in a very professional manner, and that doesn't mean it's suit and tie always, but it isn't jeans and a t-shirt. And it's also very important that you show some energy and enthusiasm for the role. And that doesn't mean acting like, oh, this is the greatest thing. It's be real, and if you really think this is an opportunity that's of interest and that is a good match, let them know.
The reason why behavioral interviews are great, it gets people to talk. And because you're not asking a yes or no, you're asking a behavioral interview question because they're effective, because past behavior is a great indicator as to how someone's going to behave going forward, right? So you're looking to that person to talk and tell you a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. So I'm looking at a few things. I'm looking, are they making eye contact? Can they tell a story? And is the story making them look good, bringing something to a successful conclusion?
Right.
So that's why a behavioral interview works so well.
That's like those PAR or CAR stories: problem or challenge, action and result. PAR or CAR. The acronym.
Okay.
You guys have heard that before,
Yeah.
I'm sure. But yeah, how you addressed a problem and what you did to solve it, and what was the overall result of that. So, and Dave, you were laughing a little bit earlier.
Candidates, shoot themselves in the foot, in many different ways, really too. But
So give us a couple
examples on that. I mean, people, can treat you very badly. They can be, rude and
Really?
unkind, and to even receptionists or others. Pretty much anybody you interface in a company with, you ought to understand that you're trying to create a relationship with them, really, and be kind to them, and be thoughtful actually as you're going through that as well. We often talk to, receptionists and ask, get comments back about how the candidate treated them.
Really?
Behavior-based interview is, looking at examples, and if you're going to mistreat somebody inside of our company, we're not going to bring you into the organization. We want people who will, add value and build the teams that we have actually as well.
Absolutely. That's a good point.
I
I always
agree.
talk to my receptionist,
Wow.
always.
The word that I've always heard is whoever you are talking to at a company, that is the most important person at the company, the one that you're talking to at that moment. So it doesn't matter if it's the receptionist, the janitor, anybody who works there, you should treat them like gold, no matter what. I've also heard anecdotally that some companies will do the bump. Have you ever heard that before? Yeah, that sometimes they'll have somebody intentionally, but pretend it's not intentional, kind of give you a little bump in the hallway just as, and see how the person
never
Oh,
heard
I
reacts
of
to it.
never heard that.
I've heard of that happening before. It sort of happened to me once. I actually had an interview at Anheuser-Busch, and after it happened, I said,
Maybe they were
"Gee,
drunk.
perhaps." But I thought perhaps, I don't know if this was intentional, but I said, pardon me, whatever, and I was as polite as I could be because I didn't know.
That's
Yeah.
sort of interesting.
Anheuser does, or did, at one point have a very interesting style. In the union, it was very difficult to get people out, so they brought them in, and had them spend hours, in the teams and solve problems, and they observed them. So that's a style that I haven't used, but there are companies that do that kind of stuff actually too.
So let's talk about job offers. What's the best way for a candidate to maximize their salary? And I'll throw that out to Cynthia.
Interesting. Maximize their salary. I go in knowing what they're at and what they want.
Mm-hmm.
The hiring manager knows what they're at and what they want. The compensation person knows.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the number. The way for a candidate to shoot themselves in the foot is start, talking about a higher number when we already agreed on another number.
Okay.
That's like, whoa, wait a minute. I have my notes right here. You said this and now. And then they try to kind of like dance around. If you say a number, stick to the number.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you maximize.
The other thing is, I think, make sure that you give the full picture. So sometimes candidates will tell you some of what they consider their compensation package to reflect, and not all.
Mhm.
And when you're at the 11th hour, you start hearing about the additional bonus or the tuition reimbursement that they have to pay back, or different things. So when the initial conversation about compensation is taking place, share fully. So there are
Full
no
disclosure.
surprises.
Wow.
I think, from a candidate point of view, being a candidate, as I was, a year ago, and, being a recruiter on the inside, if you have the expectation that you're competing for that candidate, that they're being courted by multiple companies or whatever, you're going to stretch probably a little bit further than you might, if you weren't. With the companies I've worked in the past, we really do try to treat people fairly, that we're going to try to, fit them appropriately inside the organization, but there's always a range of what that can be actually too. But if I know that I'm competing aggressively with other companies that are out there, I'm likely to be a little bit more aggressive in the offer that I make actually as well.
I ask candidates at the interview, tell me what you've got going on. Do you have any offers on the table? Because if it's a hot candidate, somebody who we feel we're going to be pursuing actively, I want to know.
And I want to thank you so much for joining us today. David Hausman, Lisa Weingarten, and Cynthia Wright, thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you for joining us today on the New England Job Show. We'll be back another time. Thank you for watching.